We've all grown up listening to the tale of Aladdin and his magical Jinn, a boy from a distant desert land who discovers a lamp, and with a simple rub, a powerful, wish-granting spirit emerges to fulfill his every desire. It's a charming story, full of wonder and fantasy. Many secretly wish for such a Jinn to appear in their own lives, imagining it to be joyful, loyal, even playful. But that story is just a fairy tale. The truth is far more terrifying. Not all Jinns are kind. Some are ancient, vengeful, and consumed with rage. They dwell in the hidden folds of the world, in shadows we pretend not to see, feeding off fear, obsession, and loneliness. Unlike the Jinn of bedtime stories, these beings are not summoned by lamps. They are drawn to fragrance and beauty. It is believed that strong perfumes and beauty attract wandering Jinns, especially women who walk alone after dark with unbound hair waving in the night air. These spirits are restless, hungry. And once they attach themselves to you, they do not leave willingly. That's why, in many cultures, women are warned never to step out after dusk wearing strong perfume or with their hair unbound. Because if a Jinn sets its eyes on you, your life will never be your own again. Breaking that bond can be a nightmare beyond human comprehension. This is the terrifying account of such a bond of a girl who unknowingly invited a Jinn into her life, and what followed became a spiral of horror, possession, and despair. For privacy and out of respect for the victims involved, names and locations have been changed. But the fear, the events, and the haunting that followed remain disturbingly real. The story begins in a distant town, modest in size, but thick with life. The people there lived in harmony, helping one another like family. Among them was Rose, a radiant young woman known for her kindness and captivating beauty. She had a glow about her, something almost ethereal. Those who saw her often found themselves unable to look away, their eyes locked as if enchanted. Rose was the only child of her parents. Her father, a warm-hearted man, owned a small bakery, a beloved place known for the scent of fresh bread that drifted through the town like a comforting memory. He not only baked, but also delivered the goods himself, always with a smile. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. One unholy night, as thunder rolled over the hills, Rose's father collapsed with a sudden cardiac arrest. By the time help arrived, it was too late. He was gone. The loss shattered their quiet world. Rose and her mother were left drowning in sorrow and silence. Their once warm home turned cold, filled with echoes of the past. But grief could not feed them. Something had to be done. With trembling resolve and a heart heavy with pain, Rose stepped up. She took over the bakery, the very place that still smelled like her father's hands and memories. She started learning the craft, kneading dough in the silence of early dawn, her eyes often wet, her hands steady. Bit by bit, the business began to breathe again. But in her effort to rebuild their lives, Rose unknowingly invited something else into it. Something that had been watching her, waiting. She started making deliveries herself, riding through narrow alleys and mist-covered streets, sometimes returning long after nightfall. That was when it began. It was late evening, and the soft golden light from the bakery's windows flickered as Rose wiped down the counters, preparing to close for the day. The comforting scent of fresh bread still lingered in the air, mixing with the quiet hum of the night settling in. Just then, Her phone bell rang with a new last-minute order notification. It was for an anniversary cake, requested to be delivered by 8 p.m. sharp. Rose hesitated. Her delivery boys had already gone home for the day, and she was exhausted. Normally, she would have declined the request, but the customer sounded desperate and was willing to pay extra. She glanced at the address. Not too far. With a sigh, Rose decided to take it. She tied her apron again, baked and decorated the cake with care, boxed it up, and hopped onto her bike. The sun had dipped below the horizon now, and the streets were bathed in a cold bluish hue. As she rode through the dusky lanes, her long, silky hair flowed behind her, catching the wind like black ribbons. Even in her simple attire, she looked striking, her beauty glowing against the night's growing darkness. The delivery went smoothly. She handed over the cake, received the payment, and turned back toward home. To return, she had to pass the old community graveyard, a place most avoided after sunset. It was 9 p.m., and the streets were now silent, unnaturally so. There were no people walking, no voices, not even the bark of a stray dog. The iron gates of the graveyard stood open, swaying ever so slightly as if inviting someone in. Rows of crooked tombstones stretched into the gloom, and a thin mist crawled along the ground. Rose tightened her grip on the bike's handle and quickened her pace. She didn't dare look toward the graves. Her eyes stayed fixed ahead, her heart thumping just a bit faster. She thought she was alone. She didn't see anyone, but something saw her. From the shadow of the graves, behind a crumbling headstone, something watched. Its presence slithered through the air, drawn to the soft scent of her perfume and the way her hair danced in the wind. A presence that had been waiting, and now it had chosen her. Rose finally reached home, weary from the day. Her mother had already prepared dinner, and the warm aroma of food offered a momentary comfort. She freshened up, ate quietly with her mother, and retired early to bed, hoping for a peaceful night. But peace was not what the night held for her. Around 1 o'clock in the midnight, Rose abruptly woke from her sleep. Her room, once warm and familiar, now felt unnaturally cold, the kind of cold that clings to the bones. At the same time, a strange, alluring fragrance wafted through the air. It was sweet, almost seductive, like perfume, but not of this world. Half asleep and groggy, Rose noticed the shift in atmosphere, but shrugged it off and drifted back to sleep. By morning, she had completely forgotten the event. She dressed for work. The day passed without incident, and she returned home as usual. But when night fell, it happened again. 1 o'clock in the midnight, the temperature dropped suddenly, and the same fragrance returned, stronger this time, sweeter yet haunting. Once again, she ignored it, blaming her imagination, exhaustion, or the change in weather. But then, it started happening every single night. Each night, at the same exact hour, Rose would wake to that overwhelming scent. A perfume too sweet to be natural, too strange to ignore. It lingered in the room like an invisible visitor, wrapping around her, suffocating her senses. And then, it became more worst. She started feeling someone is touching her body. At first, it was subtle, a faint brush across her arm, a gentle pressure against her back. She dismissed it as a trick of the mind, or perhaps some insect crawling over her skin as she slept. But it got worse, much worse. The touch grew bolder, invasive, as if unseen hands were exploring her body with sick curiosity. It was no longer a passing sensation. It was deliberate, and she knew it. Rose would wake up breathless, her skin crawling, her body trembling. The once pleasant scent had now become oppressive, clinging to her like smoke. It no longer felt like perfume. It felt like a presence. Something was in the room with her, watching, waiting, touching. One morning, pale and visibly shaken, Rose finally told her mother everything. She described the midnight awakenings, the cold air, the perfume, the phantom touches. Her voice cracked as she tried to explain the sheer violence of the invisible presence that surrounded her night after night. Her mother, though worried, tried to soothe her.
It's just a bad dream, sweetheart. You're overworked. It's stress,
she said softly. But Rose knew deep down this was not a dream. Something had entered her life. Something that smelled sweet and moved in silence. And it wasn't going to leave her alone. And that night, everything changed. As the clock struck 1 o'clock in the midnight, Rose woke up as usual, heart racing, breath shallow. The familiar cold gripped the room, and the haunting scent filled the air. But this time, something was different. The touch she had grown used to was no longer just a brush of air or a phantom caress. It became aggressive, forceful, as if something invisible had climbed onto her, trying to violate her very being. Panicked and terrified, she screamed for help, her voice slicing through the silence like a blade. Her mother burst into the room, eyes wide with fear, only to see Rose pinned to the bed, thrashing violently. Her limbs jerked and strained, but it was clear she wasn't moving on her own. It was as if an unseen force was holding her down, ramming her into the mattress with a sinister intent.
Please, don't do this to me! Someone help me!
Rose screamed, tears streaming down her face. The agonizing cries echoed through the walls, waking the neighbors. They rushed into the house, only to be met with a sight that seared itself into their memories forever. There was no one in the room except Rose, and yet it was obvious she was being attacked. Her body writhed violently, her nightgown twisted and torn, her face contorted in agony. Something unseen, something malevolent, was with her. Then suddenly, everything stopped. Her body froze mid-motion. The room fell under a suffocating silence. And then, in one horrifying moment, Rose stood straight up on her bed, unnaturally rigid. Her eyes, once soft and kind, had turned into burning red orbs, glowing with an inhuman rage. Her lips parted, and from her throat came not her voice, but a deep, monstrous growl.
She is mine. I love her. I will take her to my realm, and we will live together forever.
The air grew thick. The walls themselves seemed to tremble. Gasps rippled through the room. Everyone knew. This was no dream, no illness, no hallucination. It was a possession. Someone had claimed her. The neighbors and her mother rushed to subdue her, but Rose, no longer fully herself, possessed a strength that defied logic. Her small frame tossed grown men aside like dolls. Her mouth curled into a sinister smile as she laughed in that same distorted voice. It took 4 men to finally pin her down. They tied her to the bed with thick ropes, but even then, her body convulsed with unnatural force. The room stank of sulfur. The once pleasant fragrance had now turned into something rotted and foul, as if death itself had entered. The entity had spoken. It would not leave without her. The next morning, panic and fear still gripped the household. Rose remained tied to the bed, silent now, but her body twitched occasionally as if something inside her still stirred. Desperate for help, her mother called upon the town's priest, a wise and revered man known for dealing with such dark afflictions. When the priest arrived, he stepped into the room slowly, the air already thick with a stench of sulfur and something far worse, a malevolent presence. He knelt beside Rose's bed and began whispering a prayer. As he opened his book of holy verses, Rose's head snapped toward him, and she let out a guttural growl, a voice not her own, deep and inhuman. The priest's expression remained calm, though a flicker of unease passed through his eyes. He raised his hand gently and asked,
"Who are you? Why have you possessed this innocent girl?"
Rose's eyes, still glowing faintly red, locked onto him, but she didn't speak. She only growled louder, the sound echoing around the room like a beast trapped in human flesh. The priest opened a vial and sprinkled holy water onto her forehead. She shrieked a piercing, unholy sound as steam rose from her skin. He commanded,
"Speak in the name of the Almighty. Reveal yourself."
Then, the room fell deathly quiet. A moment later, the same deep, unnatural voice boomed from Rose's mouth.
I am a Jinn. I dwell near the graveyard, have lived there for centuries in silence. I never meddled with humans until they meddled with me.
The voice grew softer, almost sentimental, but still laced with something terrifying.
That night, I saw her. She passed by me. Her beauty, her fragrance. It was intoxicating. I had never seen such a vision. I fell in love the moment I laid eyes on her. I followed her to her home. Since then, I visit her every night, watching, loving, needing.
The priest's face hardened.
This isn't love. This is obsession. You may claim to love her, but she does not love you. Your so-called love will never be complete. It is unnatural, one-sided, and built on fear. You must leave her. Let her go.
The Jinn's voice dropped into a cold, thunderous growl.
You cannot separate me from her. She is mine. Mine alone. And if I cannot have her in this world, I will take her to mine.
The air in the room grew heavier, the lights flickered, and the shadows on the walls seemed to twist and slither like living things. The priest gripped his holy book tighter, realizing what he was facing wasn't just a wandering spirit, but an ancient, dangerous being, bound by no earthly laws and driven by a dark, twisted desire. The battle had only just begun. The priest stood firm beside the bed, clutching his holy scriptures. With a deep breath, he began chanting sacred verses, his voice rising and falling in rhythm with each word. As he sprinkled holy water onto Rose, a blood-curdling scream tore through the air. The Jinn howled in agony, its voice echoing through the walls like a storm inside a cavern. Rose's body convulsed violently, then went still. A heavy silence fell. Her breathing slowed. Her limbs relaxed. Her eyes, once glowing red with fury, were now closed in deep exhaustion. She had returned to her own body, but she was too drained, too broken to awaken. The priest wiped his brow, his face pale.
"He's gone, but only for now,"
He said quietly, his voice low and grim. Rose's mother clutched his arm, her eyes brimming with tears.
What do you mean? Will he come back?
The priest nodded slowly, his face filled with dread.
Yes. And next time, he won't leave without her. He's attached himself to her spirit. If we don't act quickly, he'll drag her into his realm.
Tears streamed down the mother's cheeks.
Please, you must do something. She's all I have left after my husband passed. Please save my daughter.
The priest hesitated for a moment, then looked her in the eyes.
There's only one way.
He said gravely.
We must give him what he wants.
The words hit Rose's mother like a hammer. Her face went pale.
You mean she has to die?
She whispered, horrified. The priest shook his head.
No, not her. Something that feels like her. We'll deceive him, trick him into believing he's taken her with him.
From the folds of his robe, the priest pulled out a small, handcrafted wooden doll, roughly the size of a child's forearm, featureless, yet eerie in its simplicity.
I need something of hers. Her hair, perfume, and a drop of blood,
he said. Without hesitation, Rose's mother ran to fetch the items. She returned moments later, her hands trembling. The priest took the strands of Rose's hair and tied them carefully around the doll's neck. He then sprayed the doll with Rose's signature perfume, the same one that had drawn the Jinn to her. Finally, he took out a long, thin silver needle, whispered a prayer, and pricked Rose's finger. A single crimson drop fell onto the doll's chest, soaking into the wood like it was alive. The doll now pulsed faintly with energy, a cursed creation, infused with just enough of Rose to deceive the supernatural. The priest then said, holding the doll with reverence,
This must be buried in the graveyard where the Jinn resides. Buried as if it were her. He will sense her presence and believe she has come to him willingly.
Without wasting a second, Rose's mother wrapped the doll in cloth and rushed into the night, her footsteps echoing through the empty streets. The wind howled and the moon loomed overhead, half veiled by stormy clouds. At the graveyard, the scent of decay hung thick in the air. She moved quickly, digging into the soil near a crumbling tombstone. Her hands shook as she placed the doll inside and covered it with earth. As she finished, she whispered,
Take this and leave my daughter alone.
After that night, everything seemed to return to normal. Rose slowly regained her strength, and life slipped back into its usual rhythm. The Jinn, deceived by the cursed doll buried in the graveyard, believed that Rose now belonged to him. That she lay with him in eternal silence beneath the earth. His presence no longer haunted her room, and the midnight whispers and phantom touches ceased. Rose never walked near the graveyard again. The very thought sent a shiver down her spine. That narrow, shadowed path, once part of her daily route, was now avoided like a cursed plague. She took longer roads, changed her routines, and always came home before sunset. Because deep down, she felt him. Watching, waiting, somewhere beneath the soil. Still in love, still searching. And Rose knew if he ever discovered the truth, he would come back.